Hello, hello. Everyone hears me properly? Yay. Let's start with a round of applause for these people that got us here, the Touch Conference people. Let's give them our love. I'm gonna, talk a bit about robots. I'm from Uipath. Maybe you haven't heard about it. We're a company that does software robots. We're at the point now where we have a $7 billion valuation, and we're probably fast-tracked to become one of the few decacorns, so over $10 billion in valuation. I think it's important to look a bit at what robots can do and at how these robots are going to affect our future, because they're going to be soon on all of our computers and desks, so do expect that. Here and now. So we think about robots as the fourth industrial revolution. What that means is we looked a bit at how software and hardware and computers evolved during the past 30, 40 years, right? So in the 1980s, basically, Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and IBM as well, they invented the computer. But what happened then was that we basically replaced the paper. So we got the same tasks, we do the same things, we just do it with a keyboard and a monitor. So in terms of evolution, we change the way we do things, but we kind of do the same things. So we don't really want to do that anymore. We think that we need to spark creativity, we need to put people to do meaningful jobs, and we need to do that pretty soon, as you'll see. We also don't think that robots will actually replace anyone. I know that's a media hype, and media always likes to present the negative stuff first. We actually think, and I'll show you how, that these robots are going to actually augment our potential. So our promise, basically, and where we think we're heading, is this age of robotic symbiosis. What does that mean? Well, it basically means that our mission is, and our vision especially, is to put a robot on every house, in every desk, in every computer. So how would that work? Well, you can think of it as coming to work and not having to do the extremely boring stuff that a lot of people do now. You can think that you won't get replaced by a robot itself, but you will have a personal assistant that you can delegate all the shitty tasks that you do on a daily basis. No one likes to do Excels. No one likes to do, I would going to say SharePoint, but it's from the same company. So, some other programs that you usually work with. So what we thought as a first step is important is thinking in flows. I'll give you an example. A lot of people that we work with, they want to automate their processes. So in order to do that, they call us, right? And you can think, for example, about a sales compensation department. What do? Once a month, they receive some numbers from some other department, and they know that they need to have some calculations done on those numbers in order to pay the people that actually do the sales. And that's in most corporations nowadays. What we've seen, though, is because we have this way of splitting our companies into departments, and these departments are getting bigger and bigger and remote and worldwide, well, there's very, very few collaboration between them. So how does that work? Is people and these companies get someone like UiPath coming in, and they say, we want to automate this certain process. And the process usually is something like, we want to get a file from somewhere, we want to make some calculations on it, and we want to send it to the next person. So what they end up doing is basically you have some experts in that particular field, and what happens is, they automate a very small thing. What they never think of is, how about when you actually make a sale, that whole thing goes into all the departments without having any human interaction. And that's the difference between a flow and a snapshot. We've seen that in the beginning, a lot of people automating snapshots. So things, you can think of it as, what you do that is, separate from the other departments. The idea is that we want to use robots to help us do good. And we've seen a lot of times that we deal with these ideas, for example, that robots are going to steal jobs. A lot of the robots are going to make us redundant, obsolete. People think that we're going to get to a point where we won't have humans in a company. And we actually think that's not a bad thing. And I'll show you why. So what robots affect now is a lot our jobs, but let's see how it could be. So jobs in particular are very important to us. It is one of the main pillars of psychological health. As a fact, the World Health Organization predicts about 1 in 2 people to suffer from depression in the next 10 to 20 years. So these rates have gone up a lot. And in the past 20 years, the prediction was, and the reality was at about 1 in 6 or 1 in 7. So you can think that basically what we're doing in our jobs in the past 20, 30 years is currently affecting us in a very, very deep way. Actually, half of our wake time is spent at work. It also matters that half of the jobs are meaningless and stressful. And this is coming from a survey that was done in the United States. And people basically don't really find any meaning in their work. A lot of people, they go to their jobs and they think that what they do is not important. And it especially comes from a mentality that we've seen coming with the third industrial revolution, where we thought it was a very, very good idea to start separating our work and having people that were very specialized. When we did that, basically, we also guaranteed to separate people, stop communication between departments, and I think you can all see it in your company. And also, it stopped us from seeing a very clear, big picture. Because of that, well, we got to a point where media, blames, they fear the whole robotic thing, that, they're going to steal the jobs, they're going to steal a lot of the tasks that we do. What we wonder is, are those jobs stuff that people should do nowadays? Do you want your kid to work in Excel? Do you want them to, go to a university like most of you did, and then, spend the next 3 years moving numbers and files, basically? We think that we can use these robots to actually lower depression, and this is only one of the things that we can use them for. Another very sensible thing that we can do is actually use them to empower our education. Because we have kids that go to school every day, but basically they go to school to become industrial workers. Our educational systems are based in the 19th century, and a lot of the values and the things and the way we teach things come from the 1890s. They've been evolved a bit, obviously. We pay a lot more for school now, so kudos to them. But we're still preparing kids to become industrial workers. The difference is they won't go to Ford or to other manufacturers and do some very repetitive thing that they do every day. We now put them in front of the computer to do the same things. What education means nowadays is that we spend many years, we acquire long-term debt, especially as you go from east to west, the debt just gets bigger. But we teach kids in a 19th century system and with the same set of values that we used to have back then. So, why not teach kids to be creative? Why not teach them to collaborate? Because if you think about it, these are two of the things that they're very hard to accomplish for robots, for example. We basically test now a type of intelligence that is soon to become obsolete. You have a lot of kids going to university doing, for example, stuff like mathematics or stuff like, advanced finance like I did. Well, I graduated top of my class in finance in the UK, and right now, most of the stuff that I learned and I know how to do, you can do it with a robot, and it's $10,000 a year now. In 5 years, probably going to be almost free. So, this type of intelligence, IQ-based calculations, linguistics, we have AIs doing it already. We don't have AIs that, know how to collaborate, that know how to be creative, that, know how to empower each other. So it's important to figure out how we're going to use the robots, how we're going to use all these advances like AI, like robotics, to actually improve the educational system. Our climate is, as we all know, a very, very sensitive subject. You have a lot of green cars and initiatives that seem promising, but the problem today is we need a lot of people to make this change. And for example, we work with Toyota. Well, they're really keen on launching, everything from green cars to self-driving cars to, you can name it. Well, at this point, we just had a meeting with Toyota like 6 months ago. They need another I think, 120,000 people to make that dream come true. And, it's not that you can spawn 120,000 people from nowhere, especially in a country like Japan, where the demographics are not looking great because they're declining and they have less and less kids that are born every year and less people that, want to get into, jobs. And what we talk to them about is, who wants to get, they never want to get a robot to replace 3 people. They want to get robots to free people that can do other things. We could also use them to direct investments better. And you can think of it as innovation versus subsidies. And this is something that you can look into. But there is a Swedish guy that actually calculated the economics of climate change. And it's pretty interesting because if you look into it, you'll find out that a lot of what we do today is based on subsidies. So you can think of it like subsidies for green cars, subsidies for buying renewable energy. But the problem with subsidies is they don't work. And they never did, basically. So you can think when Ford invented the car, he just didn't invent a faster horse. He changed the paradigm completely. And it's going to be the same with renewable energy. Right now, we need innovation. We don't need to subsidize the things that are not working. So, as an example, in 2017, the world itself paid about $100 billion for subsidies for green energy and whatever is related to green energy. So you can think of cars, you can think of different factories and so on. But the problem is, we paid $100 billion, but not a lot changed, and you can see it around. On the same time, for example, nuclear fusion is a few years away probably from becoming a reality. What you probably don't know is that nuclear fusion is probably going to provide free energy for all of us. Now, the US wants to build a nuclear fusion facility to a very big one, to start looking into it and how we could use it. The cost of that is supposed to be $65 billion. But they don't have the money to do it, and they only have 20 billion right now. As a matter of fact, they could have used, maybe as, the world, we could use a robot that could calculate that instead of paying $100 billion or something that doesn't work, maybe we can pay $60 billion on innovation and solve everyone's problem. Another important part is changing the standard of living. And it's important because we need to figure out a way, and robotics can definitely be it, to bring more money into lower income countries. And right now, there are about 4 income groups so in the world itself. So if you spend more than $30 a day, you're in the most advanced and highest income group in the world. But the lowest ones are differences between spending less than $2 a day and spending less than $4. When you go from $2 a day to $4 a day, you basically start having things like you don't have to go barefoot, or you can afford having a bicycle. What also happens is the idea that when you have a bit more money, and obviously $2 to $4 is not a great difference you can think of, but you also start burning a lot less fossil fuels because you get the energy from different sources. Maybe you can also think about our families. So what's happening today? We have about half of the marriages that end up with a divorce. And a lot of time, it's a lack of time, it's availability and commitment that gets us to, divorcing our spouses. So, what would happen when we start using robots and we go from working 8 hours a day to maybe working 4? It's a lot of time that we can put in our families, into our children's education, into our communities, and building things that are meaningful for us. And how about our health? Robots can actually augment medical workers, and we've seen a lot of fuss about going into data-driven medicine and AI. And you can think that robots are always a mean of carrying data and sending stuff around. So you can think about going to doctors and you get a CT scan. What happens now is you have one doctor that looks at your CT scan and says, you're healthy. But what happens if you had 100,000 doctors looking at it at the same time? So, AI and medicine is complicated to do at this point, but robotics is also a way to deliver AI. So you can think that of your CT scan that is sent immediately to an AI that processes it and says, you're fine, or you may have to worry about something. What we do now is a lot of times we rely on the advice of 1, 2, 3 people when we're assessing our health. So what if we move towards the future when we rely on the advice of 100,000, for example? The idea would be, you should use robots, and you should think of ways of using them in your house, with your family, with your kid, and you should learn what they do. Because of that, our product is also free for a lot of people. So obviously, we work with a lot of enterprise companies where they do a lot of automations, but for very basic users, we offer the product for free. And we don't do that type of freemium where you have, 1 out of 10 features, but we have a full free product. And the only way you're going to have to start paying is when you actually get to a scale that's large enough for you to be meaningful to pay. So we really believe that you can use robots in order to create a better future. Thank you.